Are you on DTNS today?
I'm on DTNS today again, so I'm hosting today.
All right.
Again.
So, by the way, you're killing it with in the lead spot. So,
appreciate that, man.
I notice. I was like, that guy, he's in charge. Okay. So, Rob, on today's Behind the Post episode, I was thinking that you and I could talk about technical difficulties because I had a ton last week, and how to deal with them, and kind of how that affects the rest of your week and your family life and all the other stuff that goes with that. You cool with that?
Oh, absolutely, man.
Okay.
This is not one of those things to where you can just you can do things to mitigate them and try to make them less horrible, but they're going to happen as long as you do this long enough.
Yeah. So it's funny. Last week we did not post a Behind the Post episode because I lost the episode. I had it recorded. It was the one where you and I got to know each other a little bit more because for everybody, Rob and I have never seen each other in person. We're going to see each other in January, but we've never seen each other in person. So every now and again, we break into like little conversations, just getting to know each other. And we thought that would be nice to share with everybody else. I lost that episode. And you know why I lost that episode? Because I labeled it something that I don't normally label. Usually it's BTP, Beyond the Post, Patreon, Season 3 Prep, Episode blank, right? I didn't label it that because I was at work when I edited it. I was in the middle of doing a bunch of things for work, and then I foolishly just saved it as something in a folder somewhere. And then about a week later, 2 weeks later, because we recorded this a couple weeks ago, I was like, man, what are all these stupid folders doing here? And I deleted a bunch of stuff with a bunch of stuff in it because I didn't recognize what it was, and I needed space for some other things. And then when I went to post our episode, there was nothing there. To make matters worse, I had nothing but lately I've been having a lot of internet issues at my house. I replaced my routers, but I didn't replace my modem. So I was like, man, last Friday morning, I was like, you know what? I'm going to replace the modem today. Go out. I spend $200 on this sucker. I get home, try to get it up and going. No dice. It won't connect. And I was like, I'm going to go have lunch with my wife, and then I will call Cox later. Cox, I talked to 4 different representatives, 3 on the phone, 1 through text or messaging. And the 4th guy at 3:00 in the afternoon, after this started at 6:30 in the morning when I was having internet problems. At 3:30, 4:00 in the afternoon, he goes, "Sir, you have an internet outage in your area. Are you aware of that?" I was like, I was not aware of that. So I spent $200 for an internet outage, and I turned in my old modem for $15 to get off the $200 modem. So I spent $185. And then they couldn't provision my modem, and I had to go back at 8:00 at night, Rob, when the internet outage was done. I went back to Best Buy at 8:00 at night, and I swapped it out for another one. And by 9:30, we're good to go. And then I had computer problems, and then I had in between now and then, I had to go back to work, and we had internet problems at work, which I suspect there's also a modem issue there at work, because we have our own little private internet there. Yeah. So long story short, I got a
question for you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Did one of your twins bring what you thought was a hamster home and you fed that joker after midnight? Because you had the gremlins, man.
It was cute. That thing was cute. And you know what? One of my twins might be a gremlin, and it might be my daughter, if I'm being honest. Yeah, it was yesterday was the first day that I was able to get a handle on all of the things I'm behind on. I got behind on my other podcast. I got behind on things I'm supposed to do for work. I got behind on, and when you have the second chief in charge of the fire department calling you up and being like, "Hey, where are we at on this project?" And you have to say, "Oh, I let my personal projects, which are more important, take over, and I didn't do anything on your project." When you have to explain that, I didn't explain it quite that way. I said I had, internet problems at home, and I couldn't get to it. But yeah, it was a rough week.
Rough week. I'm glad you're through it. I hope this week is going better for you. But as far as what we're talking to our patrons about today, what do you do when you have tech snafus, when you actually have issues? And there are going to be things that you are just out of your control. You just can't help it. Power goes out. You can't help. Well, actually, I don't. Let me rephrase.
You helped it.
I have now actually gotten a battery bank, so that if my power goes out, I at least can gracefully bow out of a show. I couldn't go for 3 hours, but I could probably go for another 20 to 30 before I have to worry about that battery getting sucked down. Because I didn't get one of those big giant, industrial ones. I got one that is a little better than the UPS that gives you 30 seconds. This is going to give me, with all the stuff I have plugged into it, probably a half hour to get done. So you can even mitigate that. But there's going to be times when you just, a text snafu, like you name something the wrong thing and then you accidentally deleted it. So what kind of things can you do just for something like that to just mitigate that? And the answer is consistency. Consistently name the same stuff, the same thing every single time and put it in the same place. And even if you're in a hurry, just do the thing that you always do, because when you're in a hurry, you're probably going to forget the fact that you hurried and did it a different way. And like you said, came back and what's all this crap? And you just get rid of it. And it's not until you actually go to try to find your show that you realize that crap, I should have just named it like I always do, and we wouldn't have this issue. For me, it is doing backup recordings. Like right now, I am doing at least from an audio standpoint, a backup recording. It is just a habit for me that on my mixer, I have a 3x5 card that says press record in big, bold letters, because when I look over at it, it's like, even if I didn't start at the beginning of the show, I'll do it if I don't see that thing is red, I will hit the button just to make sure that I'm getting, a backup recording. Why do I do these things? Because I've had enough times where I've done the cloud recording and the cloud recording was corrupted, or you couldn't do it and you just missed an entire show. There's times when I've actually done a cloud recording and forgot to hit record. So I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and we're talking, but nothing is being recorded because the record button was never hit. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a backup recording, there would have been not even audio, because we never actually hit the record button. So there's things like that you can do to just mitigate problems. And it's going to happen. I guarantee you, if you podcast long enough, you will forget to hit the record button. If you podcast long enough, you're going to have an internet outage right in the middle of your show. If you podcast long enough, you're going to, have a power outage and your lights go out. And, you lose everything except for potentially maybe your internet and if you're on a laptop, maybe you still have it, but your camera's not working. Nothing else is working. So there's a lot of things that can happen, and we just have to do the little things we can do to mitigate them. So you want to go over some of those things that you do, Bodie, as far as just trying to mitigate technical issues that could happen during the show?
Well, before we do that, Rob, because I use in some of my recordings, I rely way too much on Riverside for doing our backups. Like I'm able to go back and re-edit that episode simply because Riverside stores our backups up there, which is great. Sometimes you have to, if it's long enough in the past, you have to go out and request it, and it takes about 24 hours for them to get it to you. But we those episodes aren't lost, even though I deleted it. Those episodes are simply the edits are lost, but the raw files are still there. But what are you using for a Mac? Because you're on a Windows, I'm on Mac. For Mac, I use Loopback and I use Audio Hijack. What are you using to record that backup?
I'm just using my physical mixer. I have a Rodecaster Pro mixer.
Okay, so it records onto, what is it, an SD card in the back?
So it records onto an SD card, so I can record locally. So I've got a physical piece of hardware that if I hit the record button, whatever is coming through my microphone and whatever I decide that is coming back to me will be recorded on this device.
Man,
physically, locally.
I didn't know it could do that. I knew it could do, like if you just took it somewhere and you had two mics plugged in, it would record. I did not know it would send the feed back.
Oh yeah. So yeah, like right now the record button is going. It is getting your audio. It is getting my audio. So on this device, I have 4 inputs that I physically can plug into it. I have where I can use USB, where that's where you're coming in. So USB coming from the computer is going into this, Bluetooth, a couple other things. But yeah, I can record your side of the conversation and my side of the conversation locally on my piece of hardware. Before I had this piece of hardware, I was using a piece of software called VoiceMeeter Banana, which allows, it's similar to Audio Hijack, probably not as pretty as open source piece of software, where you can actually route where you want audio to go. So that would give me the ability to say that I want to bring your audio in. I want to take my audio and I want to route them both into this particular application. Let's say that the application I'm just using, like, a voice recorder, or I'm just using a recording application on my machine. I'm using some DAW. It could be something like Audacity. I could literally just take that audio and route it into that application, hit record on that application, and it'll record what was sent to it from VoiceMeeter Banana.
Yeah, that's okay. So you're unpacking a couple of different things here. One is Audio Hijack, I think, is like $50, and Loopback is $70. So open source, free and open source, and can do all of that. You just saved yourself $120 if it's available for the Mac. Loopback and Audio Hijack are really great programs, and they keep them updated. But if you're trying to do this on the cheap, what was it called again?
Audacity is what I use. I've been using Audacity for like 20 years. I use Audacity as my DAW probably 70% of the time because it just works. And I'm usually not doing significant multi-track stuff. It's just usually me and a guest, and it's good enough for that. So I use Audacity, which is open source. It's free. Now you can donate to them if you want to, but you can go and download the latest update of Audacity for free. And then I use an application called VoiceMeeter Banana, and it is also open source. Once again, you can donate, and it'll unlock some additional features where you can have multiple routes and stuff like that. But the software for just recording, both sides of a conversation that is happening over some type of telesoftware, like what we're using, Riverside, or it could be over a Zoom call, it could be over Skype or what have you. VoiceMeeter Banana is great for doing those type of things. And once again, it is 100% free unless you want to upgrade it and get, some of the additional features that are built into it.
Nice. And this looks like a really well thought out program. Like, it's not the slickest I've ever seen, but for free, this is really nice looking. And Meter is Meeter.
Yeah, it's great software, and like open source software. I know some people are saying I don't want to use open source, and I understand why some people wouldn't want to, but I have used both of these applications. Audacity I've used for 2 decades. I've used VoiceMeeter Banana for probably at least 15 years. Least 15 years. This
is nice. It looks like it's got its own mixer with the potato and.
Oh yeah, there's different flavors of it. So yeah, there's Banana is the one that I use. You've got VoiceMeeter Potato. There are different forks of it that you can do different things with, but it is excellent software. I mean, it does what you need it to do.
And it looks like they have at least for some of they have Mac support and Windows support for some of the programs that they have in here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is something I have never heard of, Rob. This is cool.
Yeah, well, they do have it for Mac, but my gut tells me that most people who are using VoiceMeeter are probably on a PC or Linux. That's what my gut would probably tell me.
It looks like most of their stuff is PC, Windows only, but when you go through some of the different packages that they have, like the virtual cabling has a Mac download.
Mm-hmm.
Meter looks like it's Windows only, XP to Windows 11. I don't see any OS 10 on here, but yeah, I mean, shoot, if you can use it, why not?
But yeah, and like I know I've actually had people say, "Oh, that's so technical," and yes, it is. But if you're trying to mitigate some other issues that you would have. For example, you and I are recording. If you would have forgotten to have hit the record button and we see it count down, there is no recording. There is nothing for you to go back to right now. You and I are just having a telephone call where we can see each other and nothing is actively being recorded. But if you're using various tools, we can make sure that we're recording the screen on your side. I'm recording the screen on my side and send it up to the cloud somewhere where it's getting stitched back together. There's all kind of tools that just allow you to mitigate little recording things. Now, I would say that trying to do a local recording for video, usually you're not doing it because you forgot to hit record. Usually you want to do it just because it's a significantly higher quality of video. One of the things that I do, my camera can shoot in a quality higher than my monitors are capable of putting information back to me. So I never need to be above 4K, but they can shoot above 4K. But 4K files are ginormous when you're sending that stuff over the internet. If you're doing a long live stream or something like that. So some people will do things like they will actually if they're using the right type of camera, if they're using a DSLR, they'll actually record locally on their camera while they are also doing the live stream or doing the podcast or what have you. So regardless of what happens with the live stream, you still at least have your side of the conversation on your SD card that you can take and use it to make clips with in super high fidelity. Or if there is a problem and the editor needs, hey, do you have a local copy? Is there any way you can send that to me? You could throw it up in Dropbox or OneDrive or what have you, and you're able to recover. So there's a lot of little things that you can do to try to just mitigate issues that happen when you're recording, particularly when you're doing it over the internet.
No, that's good. That's good. I have a question on the road in your recording that you're doing now. Does that spit it out as one file or is it individual tracks? So
depends on what I want. It depends on what I want. So normally, I have it spit out as just one track because it's just in case. I feel pretty confident that Riverside's going to work. And it's going to give us the multi tracks. So since I'm doing this as a backup, I generally only have it in single track mode, which means that let's say it wasn't just you and I, it's you and I and Allison Sheridan and Lamar, Lamar, we're all on at the same time. That file that it would create would be everyone on one track. So, if you're trying to isolate and stuff like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do. But as a backup, it's absolutely great. The Rodecaster, however, does give me the ability to record in multi-track. So I could actually have you coming in on one track, me on a different track. If I'm doing any sound beds or anything like that, they come up on a third track and I can then go and edit each one of those individually without having any bleed over from the other tracks.
Nice. That's nice. Just another reason why I should upgrade my mixer. My audio interface. Okay. So that was good. Man, I learned something today. So hopefully everybody else learned something on that as well. In terms of consistency, Rob, the secret to consistency is being consistent. It's not been, I don't have any wood nearby, but I've never not hit record on an interview or something, right? Never
Lucky
had that
you.
happen. I know. Shush. Let's not make a big deal out of it. But it is a fear that I have. And I've talked to somebody, like just kind of getting to know them. And I'm like, oh man, the interview hasn't started yet, but I definitely know the feeling of, oh, this isn't recording yet. But I do have a habit of looking at the record time.
But there are some things you can do to mitigate that. And maybe this is just one of the things you do mentally.
Go ahead.
Like I got this from Allison Sheridan. She always, before she starts, is going to check everyone's levels to make sure that she's hitting the record button, getting a sample recording, stopping the recording, going back and listening to it, making sure that everybody sounds good, and then hitting it again when she's done. She doesn't, it's just a habit. So my gut would tell me that it's probably very rare if she's ever, or at least since she's had this process in place, It's very rare that she would ever forget to actually hit record because she's actually got a process that kind of eliminates the possibility from that happening. So I am a big fan and becoming even more so a fan of standard operating procedures to where you literally are going to have a list, do this, do this, do this, do that, do the other every single time. And you're almost going and checking those things off, because when you are doing that, when you're checking those things off, you're mitigating, you're making sure all the things that could go wrong don't go wrong, because you literally have a checklist to make sure you've gone through all the things that go wrong. I think of any movie where you watch where they're about to do a rocket launch. They have a long list of things they go through, and they're calling things out, and you're saying check, and you can't get to the launch unless all those things are checked off. All those I's are dotted, all those T's are crossed. That launch can't happen unless all those things are done. And I know some people will think, well, that's way overkill for a podcast. That's way overkill for a YouTube video or any type of video. But if you get into the process of where you've got a standard operating procedure where you are making sure that you hit the record button, you're making sure that you have your lights turned on, you're making sure that you've done a level check to make sure that everybody's mic sounds good and you don't have one person is blasting and everyone else is super low. If you do those things every single time, then almost every single time, you know that, well, you've mitigated any one of those individual things from being a problem in your recording.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And there's a reason why they don't launch or pilots don't fly until they've done their checklist, for sure. And like you and I, if I didn't record this episode, right, I forgot, and we had this whole conversation, that's annoying. And you might be a little annoyed with me, but then we can have the conversation over again. Not a big deal. But like I've had on my other show, like CEOs and vice presidents of certain divisions at Siemens, which is an enormous company. Those people don't necessarily have a lot of time to go be like, can we reschedule this so that we can do this again? Thank you. They're probably not going to do it. And you might have a really cool interview that no one ever gets to see.
Yeah, I was just thinking something that we have started doing now. I go to a relatively small church. It's not a big church. It's a church plant. And, my pastor likes to use a wireless microphone that he basically has attached to his belt and has the headset and all that kind of thing. But one of the things we do is we just make sure that we have another handheld wireless mic on his podium, on his pulpit, just in case he needs it. Because if we've actually had this happen. The wireless that he normally uses went out. So he literally had to stop and somebody had to think, oh, let's go hand him another microphone. Whereas now it's just sitting there. So he can literally just grab it and keep it pushing without even, you wouldn't even notice it if you didn't notice it. It's one of those type of things. It's just kind of there. So it's just like, well, yeah, we know from history that microphones can go out. So let's make sure we've got another one that's sitting there as a backup. You will notice that when you get into television production, you looking like, man, why do they look like they have so many battery packs that they're wearing, the anchors and stuff like that? It's because they don't just have one microphone on. They sometimes don't even have two. Sometimes they will literally have 3 different microphones on. So 2 things have to fail before, or 3 things would have to fail before they would have an issue. Why? Because if you're doing live television, you can't really have somebody come up and hand someone a new microphone and get them wired up for it. You kind of have to have that already ready. So a lot of things you can do to mitigate problems in a podcast or any type of presentation that you're recording. You simply can just do things up front to take care of it.
Okay, so we talked about that. Let's hit. We can't do anything about the internet. That's just the way that things are going to go in terms of my example. But let's hit on how I've talked a little bit about how I save files. Like if it's kilowatt, and it goes in the kilowatt folder. And then it's kilowatt. I name it. I create another folder in the kilowatt folder, kilowatt 449, which is the episode number. And then every single one of the files for that episode, including the logic file, the logic project file, goes in that folder. So it's all together. I don't know that that's 100% necessary, but for me, I've tell me if you've ever had this happen before, especially in the past when software was a little bit more janky. We'll call it janky. If you move a file from one folder to another, now all of a sudden it's lost that file, right? and your program will be like, your DAW or your video editor will be like, hey, can't find this file. So I just keep everything in one folder to keep it easy. And with Beyond the Post, it's something similar, but because we have seasons, it's BTP, the season number. I'll put Patreon if it's a Patreon exclusive or not. And then I'll put the episode. And I will include all of the same thing, the video files, and these get quite big, but the project file for Final Cut, the whole thing, it all goes in that one folder, transcripts, everything. So when I need to go back and find it, it's there. How do you do it?
I have a shortcut on my desktop called Podcast Production.
Ooh.
When I open that shortcut up, it takes me to a folder called Podcast Production. Inside of there, I've got the Tech John, SMR, Purpose, Power, and Peace, Podcaster Spaces, Daily Tech Headlines, Beyond the Post, 5-minute Reels, and a few other, when I say a few other, like 16, 17 other folders in there, because I have a lot of podcasts. I put all my podcasts in the same place because I'm doing basically the same things to them. In each of those directories, I then, for like, if I were to go to just Purpose, or let's go to Beyond the Post. Inside of Beyond the Post, I have episodes by number. So episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. I just create a directory for every single episode that we do. And also in that directory, I have things for like artwork, show art, individual show artwork, and everything just gets thrown into whatever episode that we're working on. Now, what happens to each of these directories is that this is local on my hard drive. I automatically back it up to a USB, not USB, but to a SSD drive where there's just whatever is on the hard drive gets backed up to this. And then both, or I should say this entire podcast directory or podcast production directory is also uploaded to Dropbox and uploaded to OneDrive. So I should have 4 copies of everything, one in Dropbox, one in OneDrive, one locally on my machine, and then one on my, my SSD that whenever I plug this in, it's just going to go back up whatever's in that folder, by default. So just to make sure. And some will say, is that overkill? Could be, but here's why I do it. If I ever have a problem with Dropbox, well, I know that it's also in OneDrive. If I ever have a problem with OneDrive, I know that it's also in Dropbox. If I ever have a problem with my hard disk on my computer, I know that it's on this SSD. If I ever have a problem with this SSD, I know it is one of those other 3 places. So whenever I record something, it's going to go 4 places and I can always get to it. The other thing is that I can also give other people access to both OneDrive and Dropbox. So let's say that I've got an editor that's going to be working on something. They now have a directory where they can go and work and do what they need to do and put it there. And then eventually it'll all be synced back to me. And I have it in 4 places. So I'm kind of anal with it. But for me, Bodie, this is what I do for a living. So making sure I've got access to these files is pretty important. So it's not really 4 backups, but I've got 4 places where I am keeping access to the data that I can get to, whether it be 2 places online or 2 places physically.
Good. Yeah. So in the same respect, right? I have a hard drive that every time I'm at this desk, my computer connects into this because it's just a laptop and then I have an external monitor. I have a Time Machine backup that goes directly to an SSD, just like you. And then I have my stuff synced with iCloud. I pay for a decent amount of iCloud storage. And then any computer in my house that I log into, I have my stuff there. So I have access to it. It's not always downloaded onto it, and that's fine. I don't really care about that part. I just need access to it if I want it. And then I have Backblaze for like the actual backup. And when I was telling Allison about my problem last week, she said, well, why don't you just go to your Time Machine backup? It's like, that's great. I have no idea what I called the file. Like, it'll take me less time to actually re-edit the episode and send it out than it would for me to comb through the mountains and mountains of data that I have just stored on iCloud. And then I have to go back. What day did I record this on? What day did I edit it on? it would just be less time for me to go back. And if I used my normal naming convention, boom, we're done. But I didn't.
And here's another thing that helps me with that. I am not one of those personal productivity people that says, well, because it works for me, it'll work for everybody and everybody should do the things the way that I should do them. But here's something that works for me. I am I take copious notes. I take notes on everything. And I also create tasks for everything. So if there's something that I need to do, I just create a task for it. So I know that I can go look at my calendar and just see what day did Bodie and I record? Because it's in my calendar. I can just go look. And I know that, well, if Bodie and I recorded, we did it for Beyond the Post. Everything that you and I do for Beyond the Post has BTP on the front of it. Every single thing that we do. So even if I can't remember the name of it, if I can just approximate the date of when it happened and I know that it's going to have BTP, it makes it very easy to find. And I'll give you some examples of this. I've actually had, I do, audio visual stuff at my church. And there'll be times when we will sing a song that we haven't sung in like 18 months or something like that. And it's like, crap, do I have to go do, do I have to get myself or another volunteer to do the lyrics for that song? Or can I go back and find, I know we've sung this before. Can I go and find the lyrics somewhere? And we're talking about 18 months ago. We're doing, 2 sermons, a week. Yeah, I got to go through, something that happened a year and a half ago. There's a lot of stuff that I've got to look at, and I can't remember what sermon it was in. I just know that it was roughly 18 months ago. Here's the name of the song. See if you can go find it. So because I do everything in task, I can just go look through my task and do a search for whatever songs I actually created. And it'll come up and it's like, I'll try to match it up. It's like, oh, this one happened 19 months ago. Might be the same song. Let's go look. Oh yeah, we found it. So that little search that takes me all of 20, 30 seconds to do could save me literally 20, 30 minutes of having to go redo the lyrics for an entire song. So it is just being consistent. I consistently, name files the same way. I put everything into my task for anything that I've got to do that I ever would want to remember that I need to do it. I just put it in a task. And I've had people say to me, man, it's like, do you feel like you're like beholden to your calendar? Do you feel like you're, I don't like using the word slave to it, but like, do you feel like you would be lost without it? And the answer for me is yes, I would be. The reason I write stuff down is so that I don't have to remember it. And the reason that I put it in this task application is like, why do I have to remember that I did something 18 months ago? This thing can tell me that I did something 18 months ago. I just have to remember that I did stuff 18 months ago and go look and see what it was.
Yeah. Okay. So I do not have an organized mind. I think we've talked about this, Rob. I am putting Windex in the refrigerator. Like this is a real thing that happens, and it drives my wife crazy. That's where my brain is. Like she'll find things in the weirdest places. I lost my coffee cup this morning, and I couldn't find it, and it was literally by my coffee maker. So like this is like my brain it is not an organized brain. Like if you look at Allison Sheridan, for instance, one of the most organized people that I have ever met, and I know that when she comes on to help me with a problem, my methodology of things, like if we're just talking on the phone, the way I do things must absolutely drive her nutty. Like, and I love that she's my friend, and I know that this is not. I was typing in my Wi-Fi password. She was helping me with a problem with my Wi-Fi a couple of weeks before this. And I was typing in my Wi-Fi password, and she goes, "Why don't you just put in, you got one password right there. Just have one password, type it in. Why do you type it in every time?" And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. That seems very logical. Not to me, though.
I am not anal on this stuff. Well, some things I am. I anything that I intend to remember, we've talked about this before on other shows. Anything that I need to remember, I put it in my notes, because I think it's who wrote Atomic Habits? I can't think of it. It's Brian Kelly.
I don't know, but I just came across that book when I was cleaning out my closet. I'll look it up.
So it's either from Atomic Habits or about or the person who wrote Getting Things Done. I can't remember which one of these people said this, but one of them did. But it's like your brain is not intended to, remember things. It's intended to think. So I'm definitely paraphrasing this a lot, but it's like, write things down that you intend to remember to free your brain up to do what it's best at, thinking about the things that you've already written down. I never have to remember what I've done or what I need to do, because everything that I intend to do, I just take 5 minutes, 5 minutes every night before I go to bed. Here's what I got to do tomorrow. Make tasks for it. And it gets more complex than that for me, because I just kind of geek out on this stuff. But when I first got into productivity, I first got into doing tasks, it was literally sit down the night before, what you need to do tomorrow, make a task for everything so that you can just track whether or not you're getting the things done. And, that has worked. I will say it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. And like I said, I don't really preach it. It's just something that works for me. And I'll go back to something that I say, it's like success leaves clues, man. I've seen other people be successful with it. So it's like, well, what are they doing? And, that is working for them. And here's where it really became real for me in 2017, when I truly started working for myself. I was like, wait a minute. I don't have anybody to tell me that it's time to, to go do this. I don't have anyone who's telling me that, hey, these things need to get done. It's like, if you need to do payroll, you need to do payroll. If I need to go and pay taxes, I need to go do that. So I need to make sure that I've got that stuff marked down. When do I need to go meet with my accountant? When do I need to go do these things? I put all the stuff into a calendar so I don't have to remember it. A perfect example. I had a repair guy. Not even repairs, just service people came to check my furnace this past Monday. I forgot they were coming, but when they knocked on the door, I'm like, oh yeah. I looked at my phone. I had the notification to let me know that they were going to be here. It's like, oh, that just jogged my memory and reminded me that they needed to be here. I had already prepared for it because I had tasks to make sure you clean up the area in front of the furnace so they can go check it. So I did that. I just forgot that they were coming. I was like, well, I don't have to remember it. I had it in my calendar. So I knew that I was going to be home. I knew that I was going to be doing anything at that time. I just didn't remember in real time that they were coming until they knocked on the door to jog my memory. So I am a fan, and we do like we always do. We have taken this onto a tangent that is, far diverse for what we initially started to talk about. But for me, one of the things that allows me to be consistent is simply just writing everything down so I don't have to remember it, and then checking it off on a task list. Same thing can be said for doing a rundown. Same thing can be said for doing a standard operating procedure before you start your show. All those little things help me get through doing content for multiple different shows daily without having the major mistakes of, oh crap, I can't remember where I put this file, or I accidentally deleted a file because it was named something different.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And as somebody who is 100% a scatterbrained fool, if you don't learn what Rob is teaching you today, in 2 years, if you continue doing this, you're going to learn. Like, my calendar is way more active today than it was 2 years ago, and it was non-existent 2.5 years ago, if you know what I mean. So just kind of wrap things up here. Be consistent with whatever you're doing, whether it's naming files or recording your show. But when technical problems come up, work through the technical problems and give yourself some grace, because most of us are doing this as a hobby. It's not made. Most of us aren't making money at this. So if you are not able, you shouldn't be skipping episodes on a regular basis. But if you're not able to get something out on time because you had a technical problem, and then now you got your kids' play recital, and then you got their this, their that, and you gotta keep your family up at the top. Give yourself a little grace, catch up, and eventually you'll get to where you need to be. It might feel stressful when you're there, but while you're in it, but you'll get to where you need to be. And if you explain to your audience and ask them to give you a little bit of grace, they will. They understand.
I'll leave the audience with this, and we'll talk about this. We've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again on future episodes. Systems make a world of difference. If you just get into the habit of just creating systems for the things that you do repeatedly, You don't need to build a system for something you're going to do once or twice a year. But if you're doing something every week, make a system so that it's just repeatable. You do the same things the same way every time. Now you can modify it. You can make it better. You can say, this is a little bit extra. I don't need all these steps. You can do those things, but just have a system so that you can almost, without having to think about it, go through and just have a checklist of, okay, hit recording, turn the lights on, do all these things to make sure you are giving yourself the best case scenario for not having something go wrong. And then you even have a system in place for when things do. You and I right now, for whatever reason, if StreamYard, we're not even on StreamYard, but if we're using Riverside, if Riverside had a problem right now where it shut down, you and I could both be back up and running. We're within probably 30 seconds on StreamYard. Why? Because we have multiple things. Why do we have multiple things? Because things go wrong. If you only have one thing and the thing goes wrong with the one thing you have, you kind of have a problem. So, if you're getting really serious about your content creation, you might think about having a backup recording program. You might want to think about, maybe not just plugging USB directly into your computer. You might want to think about a mixer to where you can record locally. There's all these other things you can do to mitigate some of the issues that you may have. So systems is what I will leave you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to extend this program any longer, but I have thoughts on the backup recording programs just recently. So, but
sounds like an episode, man.
That'll be a different episode. All right, Rob. I want to thank everybody for being patient with me for sure. And season 3 is clicking along, so stay tuned. Should have some more to announce on that soon.
Take care, folks.